Welcome to Tech Tips with Brittany Smith. Today we're going to be talking about using some of those distracting apps a little bit less. If you've noticed that you have a bad habit of using an app maybe a little bit more than you need to, there's a few things we can do to, at the very least, not have our devices reminding us to use them again. For example, in our previous video on getting real data on your actual usage, I realized that I've been playing The Simpsons Tapped Out way more than I meant to. So we're going to do a few things to reduce how much I'm using it. This is not going to be enough for really strongly formed habits. In those cases, you might need to do something more extreme like deleting the app. One of the first things you'll want to take a look at is, are you still getting notifications from that app? If so, you might want to reduce them, or at the very least, make sure that the notifications aren't quite as intrusive. We'll talk about that a little bit more on a video called Refining Notifications. If you're trying to break the habit or use that app a little bit less, starting with notifications is going to be really helpful. Basically, what we want to do is not have the device remind us to use that app. This isn't going to help for serious addictions, just that little bit to help us make a bit of a better decision. And at the very least, to not have our device remind us to go back in and use the distracting app. One of the first things that we can do is not have the app in a prominent place where we see it all the time. If you're used to opening your device and playing, say, The Simpsons Tapped Out, and it's right here on my screen, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to open it and tap it, even without remembering probably what I opened my device to do. The first thing I'm going to do is actually just physically move the app into what some people call Siberia. It's going to be on the last page and embedded in a folder, so it's not right in front of my face when I open my device. I'm going to tap and hold on it. And you press and hold a little bit longer than you did back in iOS 12 and before, because there's a few more options. After I do that and they're doing their little jiggly dance, I'm going to move it over to my last page. And on my last page, I'm going to stick it in with another app just to make sure that I'm not using it more than I mean to. In this case with Amazon, since that was one of the other apps I'd been using a bunch today. All right, so at the very least, it's not easy to see and I have to do a few extra swipes to get there. One of the next things we can do is remove it from multitasking. If you're still hashtag team home button, you still have a home button, you're going to get there by double clicking on it. My devices are not, so what I'm going to do is swipe up from the bottom to get into multitasking. When I'm here, I see a bunch of my recently used apps. Man, if I'm avoiding getting a task done, it might be really tempting to see The Simpsons Tapped Out sitting right here. Also, when you have to reload it from scratch, it takes longer and might help you make a better decision about whether or not to still play that game. So I'm going to swipe that one up, and that's going to close it. At the very least, I'm not seeing it right in front of me. One of the other places we might accidentally come across this app is, when you go into this little searching menu, if you've seen it before, you can also see it from the widget screen. It has a bunch of Siri suggestion apps. Those are ones that the device thinks you've been using a lot, maybe at this time of day, maybe this day of the week. Some kind of machine learning algorithm thinks you're going to be using this app. I actually don't see Tapped Out here right now. I don't know what to make of that. If I was saying Tapped Out and I really meant to go search for something else, but I started wondering, gee, I wonder if Homer's off that task yet or not, I might see it and go there instead of where I meant to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that app from Siri search and suggestions altogether. I'm going to click on Settings and scroll just a little bit down to Siri and Search. There's actually a lot of options for Siri here. We're not going to go into all these details right now, but what we are going to do is scroll down to where Tapped Out is, and there's a few different options. You can learn from this app, and that will allow Siri to learn how you use the app overall. This one is going to be another little bit of a black box. If you find it showing up somewhere you don't want, turn it off, but otherwise, you might try leaving it on just to see what happens. What I'm looking for in particular is show it in search. And so even if I try searching for it as an app, it will not pop up. What that means is if I want to open it, I'm going to have to go all the way to that back page, open the folder, to open Tapped Out. And then the option right below is Show App. And what that means is it's going to show up in that suggestion of apps you might have used recently or might want to open right now. And I'm going to turn that off. So now it's not going to show up in a search when I'm looking for something else, and it's not going to pop up as a suggestion. That gives me one more opportunity to not see the distracting app and accidentally go there. There's one other way that apps could potentially be distracting you, and it's in that widget screen. So you can see it two ways. There's a little bit of a widget on iPad on the left-hand side on the home page on iOS 13, but the main way is you swipe down to Notification Center and swipe over. That's the way you'll see it on your phone particularly. These widgets are little pieces of information you might want to see through your day. Ideally, you'll have refined these, but Apple shows you some by default. This is a problem for some particular distracting apps. Apple's under the impression that by default they should turn on notifications and put news in your widget. I don't know about you, but there's nothing that's going to ruin my day faster than seeing news when I didn't want it. You go to the widgets and you scroll down to the bottom and you hit edit. And you can delete anything that you don't actually want in your widgets and add the ones you do want to see. This is especially important if you are the kind of person who might go down a news rabbit hole. To sum up, my top tips to hide distracting apps from yourself are to turn off or alter your notifications, physically move the app into a folder out in Siberia, hard close the app from your recently used, remove the app from Siri search and suggestions, and if needed, remove the app from your widgets. Thanks so much. Until next time. That is the example I'm going to use, I think. It just makes sense. I use Simpsons when you're here,
Yeah,
Star Wars
I'm
when
fine
Eric's
with
here.
that.
Well, also, it really was sort of horrifying. I'm like, that's horrifying. That's terrifying. I have all these deadlines, really?